personal reflection. There's something about the Western frontier that speaks to those of us who've lived long enough to know that life doesn't always go according to plan. We've all faced times when everything we built seemed to crumble, when loneliness felt like a permanent companion, when starting over seemed impossible. This story isn't about gunfights or gold rushes. It's about something harder and more courageous, the decision to try again. It's about a widowed father, a woman who'd lost everything, and a child who needed what they could only give each other. Sometimes the bravest thing we do is simply show up at someone's gate and ask for a chance. Montana Territory, 1883. Where kindness rebuilt broken hearts. Story. The woman stood in his yard with dust on her hem and a carpet bag that had seen better days. Daniel Sawyer watched from the barn doorway, hammer still in his hand from fixing the stall door, and saw her lips move before he heard the words carry across the packed dirt. "I'll work for nothing," she said. "Just need a place." Her spine stayed straight despite the 3 miles she'd walked from town, and when she set down the bag, he caught sight of her hands' knuckles scarred, nails split short, the kind of damage that came from real work, not parlor life. Tommy appeared at the kitchen window, face pressed to the glass. Watching, Daniel's throat went tight. Third time he'd posted that help wanted sign in 2 years. Nobody ever came this far out, and nobody offered to work for free unless they were running from something or had nowhere left to go. He looked at those hands again, recognized the story written there. "You'll do," he said. "Start now." If you're listening from your own porch tonight, where the evening settles soft and the memories run deep, I'd be grateful to know where this story finds you. She walked past him into the house without waiting for permission. Daniel followed, Tommy trailing behind, and watched her stop in the kitchen doorway. Her shoulders didn't move for 3 heartbeats. 4. Then she set the carpet bag down beside the table and crossed to the stove. The ash pile hadn't been cleared in a week. She knelt, scraped it into the bucket with her bare hands, and carried it outside. Her footsteps returned, ash bucket set down by the door. She opened the firebox, arranged kindling from the pile Daniel kept forgetting to restock properly, and struck a match. The sulfur smell filled the room. She didn't look at him while she worked, didn't ask where things were kept, just moved through the kitchen like she'd already memorized where every pot and pan belonged, though she'd never set foot here before today. Tommy pressed against Daniel's leg, watching. Grace found the flour sack in the corner. Daniel saw her fingers test it, feeling for weevils, probably then lifted it to the counter. She poured water from the pitcher into a basin, rolled up her sleeves. The scars on her forearms caught the light from the window. Old burns, recent cuts. The knuckles of her right hand sat crooked where they'd healed wrong. She started washing the dishes stacked in the basin. 3 days' worth, maybe 4. Daniel's face went hot. The pump handle squeaked when she needed more water. She didn't mention it, just pumped harder, filled the basin again, kept working. Soap smell cut through the staleness that had settled into the walls over the past 3 years. Tommy whispered, "Pa, shh." Grace wiped down the counter, found the coffee tin, measured grounds into the pot Daniel hadn't used since last week, because the effort of making it for just himself seemed too much trouble. She set it on the stove where the fire was catching now, flames licking up around the grate. She straightened, turned, looked at him directly for the first time since entering the house. "The ledger," she said. "I'll need to see your accounts." Daniel's stomach dropped. The ledger sat in the other room where he'd shoved it under papers 3 months ago. The numbers a mess he couldn't untangle. Every page a record of how badly he'd let things slide after Martha died. He opened his mouth before he could speak. Tommy pulled free and walked straight to Grace, stopping 2 feet from where she stood at the counter. "Can you read?" the boy asked. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen window when Grace found Tommy on the porch with the seed catalog spread across his lap. She'd come out to shake the flour from the dish towel and stopped when she saw him tracing his finger under the words. Lips moving. The finger paused, moved back, started again from the beginning of the line. His shoulders hunched forward. Grace shook the towel over the rail, folded it, draped it over her arm. Tommy's finger had stopped moving entirely now, resting on a picture of corn stalks instead. "That's a good catalog," she said. He slammed it shut. The sound cracked across the quiet. "Just looking at the pictures." His voice came out tight. "Pa says we might plant more corn next year." Grace nodded, turned back toward the door, let 3 steps pass before she spoke again without looking at him. "Pictures tell plenty." She went inside, left him there with the closed catalog pressed against his chest. Supper came and went. Grace served the stew she'd made from the potatoes and dried beef she'd found in the cellar. Daniel ate like a man remembering what real food tasted like. Tommy kept his eyes on his plate. Grace cleared the dishes, washed them in the basin, dried each one, and stacked them back on the shelf. Daniel had gone out to check on the horse. His footsteps crossed the yard toward the barn. She went to her carpet bag. The brass clasp stuck for a moment before it opened. She pushed aside the spare dress, the sewing kit, the tin cup. Her fingers found the book at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth. The McGuffey reader came out stiff from years of careful storage. 2nd edition. The spine cracked when she opened it, but the pages held. Her mother's neat handwriting still marked the inside cover. Property of Elizabeth Hartwell, 1861. Grace set it on the table. Tommy stood at the doorway to the other room, watching. "Come here," Grace said. He didn't move. "I won't bite." His bare feet made no sound crossing the pine planks. He stopped at the edge of the table, his eyes fixed on the reader, but he didn't reach for it. Grace pulled out a chair, sat, waited. Tommy's hands twisted together at his waist. "Your pa know you can't read much?" Grace asked. The boy's face went scarlet. "Ma started teaching me the letters. Before she—" He stopped. "I know some, but not enough." Grace's chest tightened. So Martha had begun. That explained the partial knowledge, the shame of losing what had been started. "Then we'll keep going," she said. "Pick up where she left off." Tommy's eyes went wet, but he blinked hard. "Your ma taught you well," Grace continued. "She gave you the foundation. I'm just helping you remember and build on what she started. I forgot most of it. We'll see about that. Now come sit." She opened the reader to the first full lesson. The coal oil lamp needed lighting. The sun had dropped below the mountains, and the kitchen had gone dim. She struck a match, lifted the glass chimney, touched flame to wick, The light spread across the table in a warm circle. Tommy moved closer, stood beside her chair now, looking down at the page. "You remember any letters your ma taught you?" Grace asked. "Some," he pointed. "That's C, and that's A. Good. What sound does C make? K, and A, ah." Grace felt relief settle in her chest. The foundation was there. Martha had given him that much before the fever took her. Now look at this word. Her finger touched the first one. 3 letters. You know those 2 already. Last one's T. Makes tear sound. Can you try putting them together? Tommy leaned over the book. His finger joined hers on the page. K, ah, t. What does that make? His face scrunched up, then cleared. Cat. That's right. You remembered. Tommy's head snapped up. I remember that one. Ma showed me that one. She taught you well. Let's do another. Grace turned to the next word. Pointed. Tommy sounded it out slower this time, but he got there. Dog. Good. Now this one. S. E. T. Sit. Perfect. Now read the whole sentence. Put all the words together like your ma started showing you. Tommy's voice rose slightly, gaining confidence. The cat sat on the... He stopped, looked at Grace. Don't know that one. Sound it out. M makes t, mat. He looked at the sentence again. Read the whole thing through, without stopping this time. The cat sat on the mat. Then Tommy laughed. The sound was high and clear and genuine. Grace found herself smiling, something she hadn't done in months. Years, maybe. You did it, she said. Your ma would be mighty proud. She would have been. Tommy wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Can we do another one? Many as you want. They bent over the book together. Tommy's finger moved under each word now, more sure. Grace corrected when he stumbled, encouraged when he got it right. The lamp burned steady. The stew pot cooled on the stove. Outside, full dark had come. Daniel stood on the porch with his hand on the door frame. Inside, Tommy's voice stumbled over sounds, then caught them. N. Run. The dog can run. Perfect, Grace said. The lamp made shadows on the wall through the window. 2 heads bent over the table, one small, one level with it. Tommy's finger moved under the words while Grace's hand hovered beside his. Not touching, but ready. Daniel's throat constricted. Martha used to read to Tommy when he was small, before the fever took her. She'd started teaching him his letters from this same reader she'd ordered from the catalog. Daniel had found the book after she died, couldn't bear to open it, had put it away in the trunk where it stayed untouched. Now a stranger sat at his table, finishing what his wife had started. Tommy read another sentence, laughed again when he got it right. That sound, his son's laughter. Daniel hadn't heard it in 3 years, not since the day they buried Martha, not since the house went silent except for the necessary words about chores and supper and bedtime. His hand tightened on the door frame until the wood grain pressed lines into his palm. Inside, Tommy read another line, stumbled, tried again. Got it. Grace said something too low for Daniel to hear through the door. Tommy laughed again. Daniel stepped back from the doorway, sat down hard on the porch step. The evening had gone cool, but sweat dampened the back of his neck. His hands shook when he pressed them against his knees. This woman had been here less than a day. One day, and already the house sounded different, felt different. Tommy's voice carried through the walls with something in it Daniel had forgotten existed. The door opened behind him. Grace stood in the door frame with the lamp in her hand. "He's asking for you," she said. Daniel's chest went tight. He stood, turned, looked past her into the kitchen, where Tommy sat at the table with the reader open in front of him, waiting. "He wants to show you what he learned," Grace said. Then she stepped aside, held the door open. The lamplight spilled out across the porch boards. Daniel walked through, crossed to the table. Tommy looked up at him with his finger already on the first word, eager. "Pa, listen to this." But before Tommy could start reading, Grace's hand moved to the carpet bag still on the floor beside the table. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, set it on the table beside the reader. Daniel saw the official seal at the top, the legal letterhead, his name written in formal script. "This was in your mailbox," Grace said. "Postman must have left it today." By mid-June, 6 weeks after Grace arrived, the house had changed in ways Daniel couldn't name, but felt in his chest every time he walked through the door. Feed sack curtains hung at the windows now, Boise Mill brand with the floral print still visible along the selvage. Grace had sewn them by lamplight after the supper dishes were cleared, her needle moving steady through the fabric while Tommy practiced his letters at the table beside her. Herbs hung from the rafters on butcher twine, sage and thyme and chamomile. They brushed against Daniel's hat when he passed underneath. The smell of them filled the kitchen with something green and alive. The morning routine had settled into a pattern without anyone discussing it. Grace rose first, had the coffee going by the time Daniel came in from checking the livestock. Tommy set the table 3 tin plates, 3 cups, forks lined up even with the table edge the way Grace had shown him. Daniel brought the eggs from the hen house, set the basket on the counter. Grace cracked them into the skillet where bacon grease still sizzled. The eggs cooked up with crisp brown edges. Tommy poured milk into his cup from the pitcher and didn't spill. They ate, talked about the day's work. Tommy read from the seed catalog between bites, sounding out the words he didn't know yet. His finger traced under the descriptions. "Says here the corn needs 3 feet between rows," Tommy said. "We did that when we planted back in May." Daniel swallowed his coffee. "About that. Says you get better yield if you rotate fields. Let one rest while the other grows." Tommy looked up. "Could we do that next spring? Where's it say that?" Tommy turned the catalog around, pointed to the paragraph. Daniel leaned forward, read the words his son had decoded. The boy's reading had come along faster than Daniel expected. Grace said it was because Martha had already taught him the foundation, the letters, the sounds. Grace just helped him remember and build on what his mother had started. Even so, 6 weeks from scattered knowledge to this felt remarkable. "Reckon that's sound advice," Daniel said. Grace refilled his cup without asking. The June morning light came strong through the new curtains, warming the kitchen after breakfast. Daniel went to fix the south fence line. He'd been putting it off for 2 months. The posts needed resetting where the ground had shifted during the spring thaw. Hard work, the kind he used to avoid because coming back to an empty house made the effort feel pointless. Grace appeared at the fence line mid-morning. She carried a canteen and a cloth-wrapped bundle. "Thought you might be hungry," she said. Daniel straightened. His back cracked. He took the canteen. Drank. The water had been cooled in the well. It tasted like stone and earth. Grace unwrapped the bundle. Biscuits left from breakfast. Cold bacon. "Saw the barn doors come off its hinge," she said. Daniel bit into the biscuit. "I know. Needs fixing before weather turns. I'll get to it. I'm saying I can help. Used to run a farm with my husband. Know my way around a barn door." Daniel stopped chewing. Looked at her direct. She met his eyes. Didn't flinch. "What kind of farm?" he asked. "Wheat. 100 acres. Lost it after he died. Brother-in-law took what was left." The words came out flat. Facts stated without embellishment. "Sorry," Daniel said. "It's done." Grace wrapped the remaining biscuits back in the cloth. "Point is, I can fix that door. If you want." "I'd appreciate that." She nodded, started back toward the house. Daniel watched her walk away. Her stride covered the ground steady. No hesitation. When she reached the yard, she went straight to the barn instead of inside. He turned back to the fence post, sank the shovel into the dirt. The blade hit rock, and the shock of it traveled up through his hands into his shoulders. Laundry day came midweek. Grace hauled water from the pump, heated it on the stove in the big copper pot Daniel's grandmother had brought from Pennsylvania. The soap smell cut through the yard when she scrubbed the shirts and trousers against the washboard. Daniel came around the side of the barn carrying the bucket of nails he'd been sorting. Stopped when he saw her at the clothesline. She reached up to pin a shirt. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows. Soap suds dried white on her forearms. The clothespin sat in her apron pocket. She pulled one out, clipped it over the fabric. The wind caught the shirt and it billowed out. Her hair had come loose from its bun. Strands stuck to the back of her neck where sweat dampened her collar. Daniel looked away fast. Set the nail bucket down harder than necessary. The sound carried across the yard. Grace glanced over but didn't stop working. He went inside. The house was empty. Tommy had gone to collect kindling from the woodlot. Daniel stood in the kitchen, picked up the coffee pot, set it down, picked it up again. Through the window he could see Grace moving along the clothesline. Efficient, capable, the way she did everything. His chest felt too tight. Sunday came and Grace made it special without anyone asking. No church nearby, but she roasted a chicken. Tommy picked wildflowers from the meadow, black-eyed Susans and prairie asters. Put them in a jar on the table. Grace brought out the blue willow china from the shelf where it had sat unused for 3 years. Wedding china, Martha's. Daniel's throat closed when he saw it, but Grace's hands were steady as she set each plate. "Seems right for Sunday," Grace said. "Don't you think?" Daniel nodded. Couldn't trust his voice. They sat down to eat. Daniel carved the chicken at the head of the table. First time he'd done that since Martha died. The knife felt strange in his hand, heavy with memory. Tommy talked through the meal, told a story about the rooster chasing him that morning, gestured with his fork. Grace laughed. Daniel found himself smiling. The sound of it in the house laughter at the Sunday table felt like something returned from the dead. After supper, Tommy fought to keep his eyes open over the reader. His head drooped, jerked back up, drooped again. "Bed," Grace said. "Not tired." "Yes, you are." Tommy's eyes closed mid-protest. Grace stood, lifted him from the chair. He was getting heavy, 40 pounds at least, but she managed it. His head lolled against her shoulder. His arms hung limp at his sides. Daniel watched from the doorway as she carried his son across the room and into the small bedroom off the kitchen. The rope bed creaked when she laid him down. She pulled the quilt up over his shoulders, smoothed the hair back from his forehead. The gesture was motherly, natural, like she'd done it 100 times before. When she came back out, Daniel was still standing there. "He's getting heavy," she said. "I could have carried him." "I know." She went to the basin, washed her hands, dried them on the towel hanging from the nail beside the stove. The lamp on the table cast her shadow long across the floor. "Too nice an evening to waste inside," she said. "Come sit on the porch." Daniel followed her out. They sat on the steps. The stars were starting to show in the deep blue overhead. Lightning bugs drifted over the meadow grass beyond the yard. Their brief sparks appeared and vanished in the gathering dark. Grace wrapped her arms around her knees, sat without speaking. Daniel cleared his throat. "You said you lost your farm." "After my husband died. Wagon accident. Horses spooked. He tried to stop them and fell under the wheel." Daniel's stomach clenched. "His brother came around after the funeral," Grace continued. "Said there were debts I didn't know about. Papers that needed signing. I wasn't thinking clear. Signed what he put in front of me. Turned out he'd been borrowing against the farm for years. When I realized what I'd done, the bank already had claim to the land. That's thievery. It's done." The same flat tone she'd used before, stating facts. No anger in it, just acceptance of what couldn't be changed. "Where'd you go after?" Daniel asked. "Hired out to different places, cook, laundress, whatever they needed, saved what I could. Wasn't much." "That why you walked here instead of taking a wagon?" "Sold the wagon to buy supplies. Walked because I didn't have another choice." Daniel looked at his hands. The calluses on his palms had grown back over the winter. Working the ranch alone had kept his hands hard, even when his heart wanted to quit. "I failed her," he said. The words came out before he could stop them. "Martha, let everything fall apart after she died. House got dirty. Couldn't keep up with the books. Tommy barely learned his letters because I was too tired to keep teaching him what Martha started. Her family, they'd have a case if they wanted to say, 'I'm not managing right.' Are they saying that, 'Not yet, then don't borrow trouble'?" Daniel shook his head. "Just feels like I'm failing her, all over again, every day." Grace was silent for a long moment. A coyote called from somewhere up in the hills. Another answered from across the valley. "You're not failing," she said finally. "You're still here, still trying. That counts. Does it? It does to Tommy." Daniel's throat closed up. He pressed his palms against his knees and concentrated on breathing. Grace stood, brushed the dust from her skirt. "I'm going to check on him, make sure he's settled." She went inside. The door didn't close all the way. Light spilled out across the porch boards in a thin line. Daniel stayed where he was. Above him, the stars multiplied as the sky darkened. The dipper hung low over the northern mountains. He used to point out constellations to Martha on nights like this. Now he sat alone on the porch of a house that didn't feel empty anymore. Inside, Grace's footsteps crossed the floor. The rope bed creaked as she tucked the quilt tighter. Daniel's pocket watch pressed against his ribs through his shirt. He pulled it out, flipped it open. 9:30. He used to check it constantly. Mark the hours until he could justify going to bed. He couldn't remember the last time he'd looked at it. He closed the watch, put it back, stood and turned toward the door where light still showed. Inside. Grace stood at the stove banking the fire. She looked up when his shadow fell across the floor. "You should rest," she said. "Big day tomorrow. Fence won't fix itself." Daniel nodded. Grace dumped the coffee grounds, wiped the pot, set it on the shelf. "Grace," Daniel said. She turned, waited. He wanted to thank her, wanted to tell her what it meant having someone here who knew how to fill the silences with more than empty noise. Wanted to say that Tommy laughed now, that the house smelled like bread instead of dust. But the words stuck. "Nothing," he said finally. "Never mind." Grace's mouth quirked at one corner. Not quite a smile, more like acknowledgement. "Good night, Daniel," she said. She went to her room. The door closed with a soft click. Daniel stood alone in the kitchen with the lamp burning low. Through the window he could see the barn dark against the sky, the fence line he'd repaired, the land he'd worked himself sick over. It looked different now, or maybe he was seeing it different. He reached for the lamp. His hand stopped halfway. On the table beside the reader sat a piece of paper he hadn't noticed before. Folded once, no envelope, just his name written across the front in careful script. He picked it up, unfolded it. The letterhead at the top read, "Hartwell and Sons Legal Services, Butte City, Montana Territory." His hands started shaking before he finished reading the first line. Daniel's hands shook so hard the paper rattled. He read the first paragraph 3 times before the words made sense. Legal language wrapped around threats. Formal sentences that cut deeper than plain speech ever could. Regarding the matter of financial guardianship of property held in trust for the minor child, Thomas Sawyer, and the estate portion derived from Martha Ann Sawyer, deceased. His vision blurred. He blinked, focused, kept reading. Concerns have been raised by surviving family members regarding the proper management of said estate and the financial welfare of the minor child. The letter went on, each line worse than the last. Words like fiduciary responsibility and deterioration of property values and petition for financial guardianship. The signature at the bottom belonged to a lawyer he'd never heard of, Harold Pemberton, attorney at law. But the complaint came from Jacob Hartwell, Martha's brother, the one who'd borrowed $300 5 years ago to open a haberdashery in Butte City and never paid it back. Daniel set the letter down, picked it up again. The paper crinkled in his grip. Jacob claimed the ranch had fallen into disrepair, that the portion of the estate Martha had inherited from her father, which had bought half this land, wasn't being properly managed, that Tommy's financial future was at risk under Daniel's stewardship. He wanted to be appointed guardian of Martha's estate portion, control the property Tommy would inherit, make decisions about the land. The words sat there in black ink. Unfit. Daniel's chest constricted. His lungs wouldn't fill properly. He tried to breathe deep, but the air stopped halfway down. They were right. Jacob and his fancy lawyer were right. For 3 years after Martha died, Daniel had let everything slide. The house got filthy. The accounts fell into chaos. Fence posts rotted, and he didn't replace them. The barn door hung crooked, and he walked past it every day without fixing it. He'd barely kept the place running. The ranch had deteriorated. The books were a mess. Daniel had failed in ways the letter described with painful accuracy. His hands shook harder. The paper slipped from his fingers, drifted down to the table. The lamp flame wavered. His shadow jumped and shrank on the wall. Through the window, the stars showed bright and indifferent. The land stretched out dark in all directions. The land Martha had loved. The land she'd wanted Tommy to inherit. The land Daniel had let fall apart through neglect. He pressed the heels of his palms against his eyes, pressed hard enough to see spots of color behind his lids. A door opened. Footsteps crossed the floor. Daniel, Grace's voice. He didn't lift his head. Daniel, what is it? Her hand touched his shoulder, just rested there. The weight of it kept him in the chair when his body wanted to stand and walk out into the dark and keep walking. "They want the land," he said. His voice came out scraped raw. "Martha's brother says I've mismanaged her share of the estate, says he should be Tommy's financial guardian, control what the boy inherits." Grace's hand tightened on his shoulder, then released. She moved around the table, picked up the letter. Her eyes tracked across the lines. Daniel watched her face. It didn't change expression, just that same careful blankness she wore when working through difficult things. She set the letter down, folded her arms. "When did this arrive?" she asked. "Today. You left it on the table." "I found it in the mailbox when I went to get the eggs this morning. Figured it was important." "It is." Grace pulled out the chair across from him, sat down. The lamplight threw shadows under her eyes, made her look older than she probably was. "What exactly does he want?" she asked. "Control of Martha's share. The money her father left her. We used it to buy this land. Jacob's saying, if I can't manage it right, her family should have say over what happens to it, over what Tommy inherits. Can he do that? Don't know. Maybe." Daniel rubbed his face. His stubble scraped against his palms. "Letter says they'll file a petition with the territorial court. Seek financial guardianship over Tommy's inheritance." Grace was silent. Her fingers drummed once against the table. Stopped. "Show me the ledger," she said. "What? Your account ledger, the one I've been keeping these past weeks. Show me." Daniel gestured toward the shelf where Grace had stacked the books she'd organized. She stood, brought the ledger to the table, opened it to the pages she'd filled over the past 6 weeks. Her handwriting covered the columns in neat rows. Income from eggs, expense for seed, credit at the general store. Every transaction documented and totaled. The numbers told a story Daniel hadn't been able to see before. A story of recovery, of bills being paid, of debts shrinking. "Look," Grace said. She pointed to the final column. "You're solvent, money coming in, the ranch is producing again. That's because of you. That's because you're working it. I'm just keeping track." Daniel shook his head. 6 weeks ago, these books were a disaster. House was a disaster. Everything was falling apart. Jacob's right about that. 6 weeks ago, Grace repeated. "Not now. Won't matter to a judge. It will if we show him. Grace flipped through the earlier pages, found the entries Daniel had made before she arrived. His scrawled handwriting, crossed out numbers, water stains from spilled coffee. This is before, and this, she turned to her neat columns, is after, shows you've made improvements, that you're managing properly now. They'll say I hired someone to cover up my failures. Then we get statements from people in town, the banker, the store owner, anyone who can testify you're paying bills on time, that you're a fit manager of the property. Daniel stared at the ledger. The numbers seemed to move on the page. His eyes wouldn't focus. What about Tommy? He asked. What about him? Letter says his education's been neglected, his welfare at risk. He's learning to read now. We'll show that. He can demonstrate what he's learned in 6 weeks. Is 6 weeks enough? It's something, more than he had before, and he already knew his letters from what Martha taught him. We're just building on her foundation. Daniel pushed back from the table. The chair legs scraped against the floor. He stood, paced to the window, looked out at nothing. His reflection stared back at him in the dark glass. Haggard. Worn. Maybe they're right, he said. Maybe Tommy would be better off if someone else managed his inheritance. Someone who didn't let everything fall apart. Behind him, Grace went very still. He could feel her stillness like a weight against his back. Say that again, she said. Her voice had gone flat. Maybe Jacob has a point. Maybe I'm not fit to manage what Martha left for Tommy. You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore. Yes, you do. Grace stood. He heard the chair scrape. Her footsteps came around the table toward him. She stopped close enough that he could see her reflection in the window glass beside his. You believe Tommy belongs here, with you, on this land his mother loved. That's why you're still standing instead of drinking yourself to death somewhere. Daniel's jaw clenched. You don't know anything about it. I know what giving up looks like. I did it after my husband died. Signed away everything we'd built because I was too tired to fight. And you know what I got for it? Nothing. Not even the satisfaction of knowing I'd tried. Her reflection in the glass met his eyes. Don't make the same mistake. It's not a mistake if Tommy's better off. You think some lawyer in Butte City managing his inheritance from afar is better. You think Jacob Hartwell, who borrowed money from his dying sister and never paid it back, has Tommy's interests at heart. I think. Daniel stopped, started again. I think I failed Martha, and I'm failing Tommy. Every day. A small voice cut through from the doorway. Pa. They both turned. Tommy stood there in his nightshirt. His hair stuck up on one side where he'd been sleeping on it. His feet were bare. He looked smaller than 8 years old, younger, frightened. Am I losing the ranch? Tommy asked. Daniel's throat closed. I heard you talking, Tommy said. His voice wobbled. About Uncle Jacob. About me not being safe here. Tommy, I don't want to leave. The wobble turned into tears. They spilled down Tommy's cheeks faster than he could wipe them away. Please don't let them take the ranch. This is Ma's place. This is home. Please. Pa. Grace crossed to him in 3 strides, dropped to her knees, pulled him against her. Tommy wrapped his arms around her neck and sobbed into her shoulder. Hush now, Grace said. Her hand cupped the back of his head. Nobody's taking anything. Do you hear me? You're staying right here. But Pa said, your pa's tired and worried, but that doesn't change the facts. This is your land, your inheritance, and we're going to make sure it stays that way. Promise. Grace looked up at Daniel. Her eyes held something fierce, something that dared him to contradict her. "Promise," she said. Tommy's crying slowed to hiccups. Grace stood, kept one hand on his shoulder, guided him back toward his room. "Come on, back to bed. I won't be able to sleep. Then I'll sit with you till you do." They disappeared through the doorway. Daniel heard the rope bed creak, heard Grace's low voice murmuring something he couldn't make out, heard Tommy's sniffles gradually quiet. He turned back to the window. His reflection looked older than it had a minute ago, more broken. On the table behind him, the letter from Butte City lay spread open. Legal words that wanted to take away what Martha had left. Words that said Daniel wasn't fit to manage his own son's future. Grace's footsteps returned. She stopped in the doorway. "He's asleep," she said. Daniel nodded, didn't turn around. "We're fighting this," Grace said. Not a question, a statement. "I don't know how." "I do." He turned then, looked at her straight. Why would you fight for us? You've been here 6 weeks. This isn't your burden." Grace's jaw tightened. For a moment she didn't answer. Then she spoke, each word deliberate. "Because you gave me a place when I had nowhere to go. Because Tommy deserves to keep his mother's land. Because that letter," she pointed at the table, "is from people who want to take what they didn't build. I've seen it before. I won't stand by and watch it happen again, even if we lose, and even then." Daniel's chest felt like someone had wrapped bands around it and pulled them tight. He looked at Grace standing there with flour still on her apron from making breakfast that morning, looked at the ledger on the table with its neat columns, looked at the doorway where Tommy had stood crying, terrified of losing his home. "All right," he said. "All right, what?" "We'll fight." Grace's shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief, maybe, or just tension releasing. "Good," she said. "Then here's what we do. Tomorrow, I ride into town, get statements from the banker and store owner saying you pay your bills on time. You go through every receipt you've got, find anything that shows the ranch is being properly managed. We document everything, and then we show them you're not the man they're describing. We show them you've recovered, that you're fit to manage Tommy's inheritance." Daniel's hands still shook when he picked up the letter again. The legal words blurred, but he forced himself to read through to the end. The final paragraph made his stomach drop. "They're requesting a hearing," he said. 4 weeks from now, in Butte City." Grace moved to the table, read over his shoulder. Her breath caught. 4 weeks, she said. "Not much time." "It'll have to be enough." Daniel folded the letter, set it aside. His hands found the edge of the table and gripped until his knuckles went white. "Grace," he said. "What? If we lose, if they take control of Martha's share?" "They won't. But if they do, I want you to know." He stopped. The words tangled. "These past weeks, having you here, it's meant something." She touched his arm, just briefly. "I know." They stood there in the lamplight with the letter between them and the weight of the coming fight pressing down on both their shoulders. Then Grace moved away, banked the fire, blew out the lamp. The room went dark except for moonlight through the window. "Get some sleep," she said. "We've got work ahead." Her footsteps crossed to her room. The door closed. Daniel stood alone in the dark kitchen. Through the window, he could see the barn shape black against the stars. The fence line. The land. His land. Tommy's land. Martha's land. He wouldn't let Jacob Hartwell take control of it without a fight. But when he finally went to his room and lay down, sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept circling back to the letter, to the hearing in Butte City, to the real possibility that in 4 weeks, a judge might decide Daniel wasn't fit to manage his own son's inheritance. And underneath all of that, one thought he couldn't shake. What if they were right? The question sat like a stone in his chest until dawn. Light finally showed gray through the window. Grace was saddling Daniel's horse when the sun cleared the mountains. Daniel found her in the barn with the cinch strap pulled tight and her foot already in the stirrup. She wore the same blue check calico she'd arrived in, the dust still on the hem from that first walk. "You know how to ride?" he asked. "Well enough." She swung up into the saddle. The horse sidestepped once. She corrected with her knees and the animal settled. "I'll be back before dark." "What are you going to tell people?" "The truth, that you need character statements for a legal matter." She gathered the reins. "The banker know you." "Some. I pay my bills there. Store owner, Harrison. Been buying from him since I settled here." "Then that's where I'll start." She touched her heels to the horse's flanks. The animal moved forward out of the barn into the morning light. Daniel watched her ride down the path toward the road, her back straight despite the rough gait. When she reached the bend where the cottonwoods grew, she didn't look back. Tommy appeared at Daniel's elbow. "She coming back?" the boy asked. "She said she would. But what if she don't?" Daniel's jaw tightened. The same question had been sitting in his own chest since he woke. Grace had no reason to stay, no reason to fight someone else's battle. "She'll be back," Daniel said, made his voice certain. They went inside. The kitchen felt wrong without Grace moving through it. The stove sat cold. No coffee smell. No sound of her footsteps. Daniel built the fire. Tommy got the eggs. They made breakfast in silence. The eggs came out rubbery. The biscuits from yesterday were hard. After they ate, Daniel pulled down the wooden box from the top shelf in the other room, the one where he'd been shoving papers for 3 years. Every receipt, every bill, every scrap that seemed important. He dumped the contents on the table, papers scattered across the wood, some torn, some water-stained, some with Martha's handwriting still visible in the margins where she'd noted the date or amount. Tommy climbed onto the chair beside him, looked at the mess. "What are we doing?" the boy asked. "Finding proof." Daniel said. He started sorting. Bills from the general store, receipts for seed and tools, the deed to the property, Martha's death certificate, his marriage certificate, Tommy's birth record from when the traveling preacher came through and registered it. Each paper went into a stack. Daniel's hands moved faster as he worked, finding order in chaos, finding evidence that he'd been trying, that he'd kept paying what was owed even when the house fell apart. "Pa," Tommy said, "what? Miss Grace said I should write something for the judge to show I can read now." Daniel paused mid-sort, looked at his son. Tommy's face was serious, older than 8 in that moment. "You want to do that?" Daniel asked. "If it helps." Daniel pulled open the drawer where Grace had organized the writing supplies, found paper, found the pencil she'd sharpened, set them in front of Tommy. "Write what you know," Daniel said. Tommy picked up the pencil, held it the way Grace had shown him. His tongue poked out between his lips as he concentrated. The pencil moved across the paper, slow, deliberate, each letter formed with care. Daniel went back to sorting, but his eyes kept drifting to Tommy's bent head, to the careful way the boy shaped each word. After a while, Tommy set down the pencil, pushed the paper across the table. Daniel read it. The letters weren't perfect. Some leaned wrong. The spacing was uneven. But every word was legible. Every sentence made sense. "My name is Thomas Sawyer. I am 8 years old. My pa is a good pa. Miss Grace teaches me reading. Ma started teaching me my letters before she died. Miss Grace helped me remember, and now I can read." The cat sat on the mat. "I want to stay with my pa on Ma's land. Please." Daniel's vision blurred. He blinked hard, cleared his throat. "That's good," he said. His voice came out rough. "Real good." Tommy looked at the paper like he wasn't sure. "You think it'll help?" "It will." They went back to work. Tommy started copying more sentences from the McGuffey reader, his samples of progress. Daniel continued sorting receipts into order by date. The sun climbed higher. The kitchen heated up. Sweat dampened Daniel's collar. He was nearly through the box when he found the envelope. The paper had gone soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded. Martha's name was written across the front in ornate script. Inside was a single page. Heavy stock. Daniel pulled it out, started reading. His hands went still. "Pa," Tommy said. "What's that?" Daniel read the document again, then a third time. The words didn't change. It was a promissory note, dated April 1880, 3 years and 2 months ago. Martha had still been alive then, just barely. The fever had started. The note promised to repay $300 borrowed from Martha Ann Sawyer by her brother Jacob Hartwell for establishing business ventures in Butte City. Payment due within 2 years, interest at 5% per annum. The signature at the bottom was Jacob's. Daniel recognized it from the wedding, from the correspondence Martha used to get. There was no record of repayment, no canceled note, no receipt showing the debt satisfied. Daniel set the paper down. His pulse hammered in his ears. $300. The exact amount Martha's father had left her. The amount she'd used to buy half this land. Money that should have been Tommy's inheritance. And Jacob had borrowed it and never paid it back. Daniel's hands started shaking again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was something harder. "What is it?" Tommy asked. "Your uncle owes us money," Daniel said. "How much?" "A lot." The kitchen door opened. Grace's footsteps crossed the threshold. She was breathing hard. Her face was flushed from riding. "Got the statements," she said. She set a folded bundle of papers on the table. The banker, the store owner, even the postmaster wrote one. They all say. She stopped, looked at Daniel's face. What happened? Daniel held up the promissory note. Grace took it. Read it. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "When did you find this?" she asked. "Just now, in Martha's papers. He never paid it back. Not that I can find." Grace set the note down beside Tommy's letter, beside the stack of receipts and the character statements. the evidence mounted on the table between them. "This changes things," she said. "How?" "Because now we know what this is really about. It's not about managing Tommy's inheritance properly. It's about money Jacob owes and doesn't want to pay." She picked up the note again, studied it. $300 with interest over 3 years. That's close to $400 by now. He's trying to get control of the estate so he doesn't have to repay the debt, Daniel said. The understanding settled over him, heavy and certain. He's claiming I've mismanaged Martha's share, that he should be guardian of it. But what he really wants is control so the debt disappears. That's fraud, Grace said. It's clever, Daniel said. If he's guardian of the estate, he can claim the money Martha lent him was an investment in the land, that he doesn't owe anything because he has partial interest. Grace's jaw clenched. She set the note down, too carefully, like she wanted to crumple it but was forcing herself to be gentle. "Then we take this to the judge," she said. "Show him what Jacob really is. Will that be enough?" "It's more than we had this morning." Daniel looked at the papers spread across the table. Tommy's letter in its careful script, the receipts showing bills paid, the character statements from town, the promissory note proving Jacob's debt. A case built from scraps, from evidence gathered in desperation. But maybe enough. "We need to go to Butte City," Daniel said. Soon as we can, before the hearing, confront him with this." Grace nodded, started clearing space on the table. "Then we've got 3 more weeks to prepare. We document everything, make copies, build a case that's airtight." They worked through the afternoon. Grace wrote out summaries of each document. Daniel organized receipts by category. Tommy practiced his reading, preparing to demonstrate his progress. By evening, they had 3 neat stacks tied with grosgrain ribbon. Evidence, proof, defense. Grace made supper. They ate quickly, went back to work. The lamp burned low. Daniel refilled it. They kept going. It was past midnight when Grace finally set down her pen, stretched. Her back cracked. "That's all we can do tonight," she said. Daniel rubbed his eyes. The numbers had started blurring an hour ago. Tommy had fallen asleep at the table, head pillowed on his arms. Grace lifted him gently, carried him to bed, came back and sat down across from Daniel. The lamp flickered between them, cast shadows that made the kitchen feel smaller, more intimate. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel asked. The question had been building all day. Grace looked at him steady. "I told you, because you gave me a place. That's not enough reason to fight this hard." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "After I lost the farm, after I realized what I'd signed away, I wanted to die. Thought about it seriously. Thought about walking into the river and not coming back." Daniel's chest tightened. "What stopped me was stubbornness mostly," Grace continued. "The idea that if I gave up, the people who'd cheated me would win completely, and I couldn't stand that. So you kept going." "So I kept going, one day at a time, taking whatever work I could find, looking for, I don't know, another chance maybe, a reason to care about tomorrow." She reached across the table. Her hand covered his where it rested on the wood. "Then I walked up your road and saw that sign, help wanted. And something in me said this is what you've been walking toward." Daniel's throat closed. Her hand was warm on his, solid, real. "Grace," he said. "What?" After this is over, after the hearing, if we win, he stopped. The words stuck. Would you stay, not as help, as... She squeezed his hand, but didn't answer. Just looked at him with those steady eyes. Ask me after, she said finally. After what? After we've won. When you're sure this is what you want. Not because you need someone to keep the books. I'm not, you are. And that's fine. I understand. But I won't be chosen out of need. I won't be something you settle for because you're too tired to look for what you really want. The words hit hard. Daniel pulled his hand back. That's not what I'm doing, he said. Isn't it? No. He stopped. Couldn't find an answer that felt true enough. Grace stood, started banking the fire. Ask me after, when we're both sure. She went to her room. The door closed. Daniel sat alone at the table. The 3 stacks of papers sat in front of him. Everything they'd built. Everything they'd fight with. He picked up the promissory note. Read it again in the dying lamplight. Martha's handwriting was in the margin. Faint. But there. In case something happens. She'd known. Even dying. She'd known her brother might try something. Had made sure this note was where he could find it, where it could protect Tommy if it was ever needed. A message from beyond the grave, a warning, a gift. Daniel folded the note carefully, put it with the other papers. Then he blew out the lamp and went to bed. But sleep didn't come. His mind kept circling. The hearing was 4 weeks away. They had evidence now. They had a case. But what if it wasn't enough? What if, despite everything, the judge still ruled against him? What then? The stars were still out when Daniel carried Tommy's carpet bag to the buckboard. He'd packed it the night before. Extra socks, the McGuffey reader, a shirt that needed mending but was clean. Everything the boy would need for staying with the widow McAllister while they were gone. Grace came out of the house with a cloth-wrapped bundle, bread and cheese for the journey. Her face looked drawn in the pre-dawn light. She hadn't slept. Neither had he. Tommy appeared in the doorway, still in his nightshirt, his feet bare on the porch boards. I don't want to go, he said. Daniel set down the carpet bag, went to the porch. Knelt so he was level with his son's face. I know, Daniel said. Then let me come with you. Can't do that. Why not? Because I might lose you there. Daniel thought. Because if the judge rules against me, they might take control right then. Take the land before I can figure out what to do next. But he didn't say any of that. Just gripped Tommy's shoulders and felt how small the boy still was. How easy it would be for someone to take what wasn't theirs. Mrs. McAllister will take good care of you, Daniel said. I don't care about that. Tommy's voice cracked. What if you don't come back? We're coming back. But what if you don't? Daniel's throat closed. He couldn't promise what he didn't know. Couldn't lie to his son, even to make the leaving easier. Grace's hand touched the top of Tommy's head. Light. Brief. Your pa and I are going to fight for this place, she said. For you. And we're going to win. You understand? Tommy looked up at her. His eyes were wet, but he blinked hard. Nodded. Now go get dressed, Grace said. We need to leave soon. Tommy went inside. Daniel stood. His knees ached from kneeling on the hard boards. You shouldn't promise him that, he said. Why not? Because we might not win. Grace's jaw tightened. Then we'll have fought. That's all anyone can do. Mrs. McAllister's homestead, sat 2 miles south of the ranch, halfway to town, a small place with a vegetable garden and chickens. Her husband had died 2 years back in a mining accident, crushed when a support beam failed. She'd stayed on alone since then, managing. She came out when she heard the buckboard. A stout woman past 50 with gray hair pulled back severe, work-worn hands, kind eyes. "Mrs. McAllister," Daniel said, "appreciate you doing this." "Not a problem." She looked at Tommy. "You'll help me with the chickens while your pa's gone." Tommy nodded, climbed down from the buckboard without being told. Daniel watched him go inside with Mrs. McAllister. The door closed. The boy didn't look back. Grace touched Daniel's arm. "He'll be fine." Daniel picked up the reins, turned the buckboard toward town. They rode in silence. The sun climbed over the mountains behind them, cast their shadows long on the road ahead. The train to Butte City left at noon. They had 2 hours to wait. Daniel and Grace sat on the bench outside the station, their bags at their feet. The ticket agent had looked at Grace's worn dress and Daniel's patched coat and taken their money without comment. Around them, other travelers waited, a merchant with sample cases, a woman in an expensive traveling suit, 2 miners heading back north. Daniel felt shabby next to them. Felt like what he was, a small rancher barely keeping his head above water, coming to beg a judge not to take control of his son's inheritance. His hands started shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs. Grace noticed. She always noticed. "Stop it," she said quietly. "Stop what? Thinking you're not good enough." "I'm not." "Then neither am I." Her voice had an edge. "Neither is Tommy. Neither is anyone who's ever had to fight for what's theirs." Daniel looked at her, at the fierce set of her jaw, the way she held herself straight despite the shabby dress and the carpet bag that had seen too many miles. "You ever doubt yourself?" he asked. "Every day. But you don't show it. Can't afford to." A whistle sounded in the distance. The train coming. The car was half empty. They found seats near the back. The plush cushions smelled like coal smoke and old sweat. Grace set her bag on the floor, arranged her skirt, pulled out the folder with their papers. "We should go through these again," she said. Daniel's stomach turned. "Not now." "When then?" "Just not now." Grace looked at him. Really looked, her eyes searching his face. "You're afraid," she said. "Of course I'm afraid." Of losing Tommy's land or of standing in front of Jacob. Both. Daniel's voice came out harsh. Of standing there and having everyone see what I already know. That I failed. That I let everything fall apart. That I'm not. He stopped, pressed his palms against his eyes. "Not what?" Grace asked. "Not enough," Daniel said. The words came out broken. "I wasn't enough for Martha. Couldn't save her. Couldn't keep the house running after she died. Couldn't even finish teaching Tommy what Martha started. What kind of man can't do that?" His voice had risen. The merchant across the aisle glanced over. Daniel didn't care. "I'm going to stand in that courtroom," he continued. "And that judge is going to see exactly what I am. Someone who can't manage his own life, let alone protect his son's inheritance. And he's going to give Jacob control because that's what I deserve." The words hung in the air between them, raw, shameful, true. The train lurched forward, started moving. The station slid past the window, then the town, then open country. Grace was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" Daniel didn't answer. "I see a man who kept paying his bills even when he had no reason to care about tomorrow. Who kept working the land even when every morning must have felt impossible. Who let a stranger into his house because she needed help and he still had enough humanity left to give it." She shifted in her seat, turned to face him direct. "You think you failed, Martha? Maybe you did. Maybe we all fail the people we love in ways we can't fix. But you didn't quit. That's what matters. Doesn't feel like it matters. It will. When that judge asks why he should let you keep managing Tommy's inheritance, you tell him what you've done these past weeks, how you've recovered, how you're still trying." Daniel shook his head. "What if it's not enough? Then we'll deal with that when it comes." The train picked up speed. The wheels clacked over the rails in steady rhythm. Montana Territory rolled by outside. The familiar landscape he'd known for 8 years. The place Martha had loved. The place Tommy had been born. The place he might lose control over. His chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out and left empty. Grace's hand found his on the seat between them. Her fingers wrapped around his, warm, solid, real. "I lost everything once," she said. "My husband, my farm, my sense of who I was. After I signed those papers, after I realized what I'd done, I wanted to die. Thought about it seriously, thought about walking into the river and just not coming back." Daniel turned to look at her, her profile against the window, the set of her jaw. "What stopped you?" he asked. "Stubbornness, mostly. The idea that if I gave up, then the people who'd cheated me would win completely. And I couldn't stand that. So you kept going. So I kept going. One day at a time, taking whatever work I could find, saving what little I earned, looking for another chance." She squeezed his hand. "Then I walked up your road and saw that sign, help wanted. And something in me said this is what you've been walking toward." Daniel's throat constricted. "You couldn't have known that." "No, but I hoped." They sat in silence for a while. The train rocked. The landscape passed. Mountains gave way to rolling hills. Hills to flat land. "Grace," Daniel said. "What? After this is over, after the hearing, if we win," he stopped. The words stuck. Grace's hand tightened on his, but she didn't answer right away, just looked at him with those steady eyes that saw too much. "Ask me after," she said finally. "After what?" "After we've won. When you know for certain this is what you want. When you're choosing it because you want to. Not because you need someone to help keep the books. I'm not. You are. And that's fine. I understand it. But I won't be chosen out of necessity. I won't be another thing you settle for because you're too tired to fight for what you really want." The words hit like a physical blow. Daniel pulled his hand back. "That's not what I'm doing," he said. "Isn't it?" "No. He stopped, looked at his empty hand, at the space between them on the seat. "I choose you. Is that what you want to hear? I choose you. Do you?" Grace's voice was gentle, not accusing, just asking. "Or do you choose not being alone?" Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, couldn't find an answer that felt true enough to speak aloud. Grace turned back to the window. "Ask me after," she said again, "when we're both sure." They didn't talk much for the rest of the journey, just sat side by side, watching the landscape change as evening came on. Butte City sprawled across the hillside when they finally arrived. Brick buildings 3 and 4 stories tall, mine head frames visible on the ridges. Smoke from smelters hung heavy in the air. They stepped off the train into noise and crowds. More people than Daniel had seen in months. All of them moving with purpose he didn't understand. Grace gripped her carpet bag. "Where's the lawyer's office?" Daniel pulled out the letter. "Read the address." "Harrison Street, near the courthouse." They asked directions from a man selling newspapers. He pointed west. They walked. The streets were mud and ore dust mixed. Daniel's boots squelched with each step. The smell of smoke and chemicals burned his throat. They found the building. 3 stories, brick. A brass plaque beside the door read Hartwell and Sons Legal Services. Daniel stopped on the sidewalk, looked up at the windows on the 2nd floor. One was lit. Shadows moved behind the glass. "That's him," Daniel said. "That's Jacob." Grace stood beside him. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Neither am I." She climbed the steps, reached for the door handle. Daniel grabbed her wrist. "Wait." She turned. "What?" He didn't know what. Didn't have words for the fear crawling up his spine, for the certainty that once they walked through that door, everything would change irreversibly. Grace's eyes searched his face. Then she leaned in, close enough that he could smell the train smoke in her hair, close enough to kiss. His breath caught, but she didn't kiss him, just stood there, close, waiting. "After," she whispered, "when we're sure." Then she stepped back, opened the door, went inside. Daniel followed. The interior was all dark wood and leather. A waiting room with chairs that looked expensive. A desk where a clerk sat writing. He looked up when they entered. "Can I help you?" "We're here to see Mr. Hartwell," Grace said, "and his lawyer, Mr. Pemberton." The clerk's eyes traveled over them, taking in their worn clothes, their travel-dusty appearance. His mouth pinched like he'd tasted something sour. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but they'll want to see us." "I'm afraid Mr. Hartwell is quite busy." "My name is Daniel Sawyer," Daniel said. His voice came out louder than he intended. "I'm here about the petition regarding my son's inheritance. Mr. Hartwell will see us." The clerk's expression didn't change, but he stood, went to the door behind the desk, knocked, opened it slightly and spoke to someone inside. Voices murmured. Daniel couldn't make out words. The clerk returned. "Mr. Hartwell will see you, but only briefly. He has an engagement this evening." They were shown into an office that smelled like cigar smoke and furniture polish. Jacob Hartwell sat behind a desk twice the size of the table in Daniel's kitchen. He was heavier than Daniel remembered, jowls starting to show, expensive suit, gold watch chain across his vest. Beside him stood a thin man with spectacles. The lawyer, presumably, Pemberton. Jacob's eyes went to Daniel, then to Grace. His mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Daniel," he said, "didn't expect to see you until the hearing. I wanted to talk before that." "About..." Daniel's mouth went dry. All the words he'd practiced on the train dissolved. He stood there like an idiot, silent. Grace stepped forward, set the folder on the desk. "About this," she said. She opened it, pulled out the promissory note, laid it flat where Jacob could see. The smile vanished from Jacob's face. Jacob's face went pale, then red, then pale again. He picked up the promissory note. His hands shook slightly. He read it, set it down, looked at the lawyer. Pemberton leaned forward, adjusted his spectacles. Read the note without touching it. The office was silent except for the ticking of a wall clock and the distant sound of ore wagons rumbling past outside. "Where did you get this?" Jacob asked. His voice had changed, gone tight. "Martha's papers," Daniel said. "She kept it safe." Jacob stopped, started again. "That debt was forgiven, between siblings. We didn't formalize everything." "Then you should have no trouble producing documentation of that," Grace said. Jacob's jaw clenched. "We were family. We didn't write down every little thing." $300 isn't little," Daniel said. Pemberton cleared his throat. "Mr. Hartwell, may I speak with you privately?" "No." Jacob stood. The chair scraped back. "This changes nothing. The petition stands. Daniel has mismanaged the estate. That note has no bearing on Tommy's welfare." "Actually," Grace said, "it has everything to do with it." She pulled out the next document, Tommy's letter, set it beside the promissory note. "Thomas Sawyer," she read aloud. "Age 8, written in his own hand 3 weeks ago. Before that, he could barely read. His mother had started teaching him his letters before she died. Now he can read full sentences. His father brought me in to teach him, to manage the household, to help restore what was lost." Jacob's lip curled. "And who are you exactly?" "Grace Hartley. I work for Mr. Sawyer." "A servant then, a housekeeper, and a teacher, and someone who keeps accurate books." She pulled out the ledger, set it down, opened it to the pages she'd written. "These are the accounts for the past 6 weeks. Every bill paid on time, every expense recorded. The ranch is solvent, improving. Your petition claims mismanagement, but the evidence shows otherwise." Pemberton was reading the ledger now. His finger traced down the columns. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. 6 weeks, Jacob said. 6 weeks of cleaned up accounts doesn't erase 3 years of neglect. "No," Daniel said, "it doesn't. But it shows I'm trying, that I've recovered, that I'm fit to manage Tommy's inheritance. Are you?" Jacob's voice rose. "Are you fit? You let that ranch fall apart. You let Tommy go barely educated. You couldn't even keep the house clean. Martha would be ashamed." The words hit like fists. Daniel's chest constricted. His hands balled at his sides. "You're right," he said. Jacob blinked. "What?" "You're right. I let everything fall apart. I failed Martha, failed Tommy, failed myself." Daniel's voice shook, but he kept going. "I spent 3 years barely functioning, barely alive, just going through the motions because I didn't know what else to do." He stepped closer to the desk. "But I'm here now, fighting, trying to make it right. That's more than you've done. How dare you? You borrowed $300 from your dying sister and never paid it back. Then you tried to take control of her son's inheritance so you wouldn't have to. That's not concern for family. That's theft." Jacob's face went purple. I built a business with that money, created jobs, contributed to this community. What have you done besides wallow in self-pity on a failing ranch? I raised my son, Daniel said. Kept him fed, kept him safe, kept going when I wanted to quit. That's what I did. The clock ticked, loud in the silence. Pemberton set down the ledger, removed his spectacles, cleaned them with a handkerchief pulled from his vest pocket. Mr. Hartwell, he said quietly, may I see you outside? No, we're settling this now. Jacob, Pemberton's tone sharpened. Outside. Now. Jacob's jaw worked, but he stood, followed Pemberton out of the office. The door closed behind them. Good, she said. I called him a thief. He is a thief. Through the door, voices rose, muffled but heated. Pemberton's tone measured and firm. Jacob's loud, defensive. Daniel couldn't make out words, just the rhythm of argument. The lawyer speaking, Jacob interrupting. The lawyer speaking again, longer this time. Silence, then footsteps. The door opened. Pemberton came in first. His expression was carefully neutral. Jacob followed. His face was still red, but something in him had deflated. Pemberton sat, gestured to the chairs across from the desk. Please, sit. Daniel and Grace sat. Daniel's hands gripped his knees. Grace placed the folder on her lap. Pemberton folded his hands on the desk. I've advised my client of certain legal realities regarding this case. The promissory note you've produced is valid, enforceable. The debt remains outstanding with interest accumulated over 3 years. Jacob stared at the wall behind Daniel. His jaw clenched so tight, a muscle jumped. Furthermore, Pemberton continued, the evidence you've presented regarding improvements to the property and the child's education contradicts the claims made in our petition. Territorial law permits estate challenges only in cases of extreme negligence, and the bar is quite high. A judge would take your recent recovery into consideration. So you're dropping it, Daniel said. Not exactly. Pemberton picked up a pen, pulled paper toward him. We're proposing a settlement. Mr. Hartwell will withdraw the petition seeking financial guardianship. In exchange, the debt referenced in the promissory note will be forgiven. Daniel's stomach dropped. What? The $300 plus interest. Mr. Hartwell acknowledges it's owed. But given the complexity of pursuing legal remedy and the costs involved, he proposes mutual release. He drops the guardianship petition. You forgive the debt. Both parties walk away. No, Daniel said. Grace's hand touched his arm. Warning, but he shook it off. No, he repeated. That money was Martha's. It's Tommy's inheritance. I'm not giving it up. Mr. Sawyer, Pemberton began. He stole from my wife while she was dying, then tried to steal my son's land to cover it up. And you want me to just what? Forget about it. Pretend it never happened. I'm suggesting a practical solution that benefits both parties. The hell with practical. Daniel stood. The chair scraped back. I want what he owes, every dollar, with interest. Or I take that note to a different judge and let him decide. Pemberton's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened on the pen. Jacob finally spoke. His voice was hoarse. You can't get blood from a stone. Daniel, I don't have $300. The business failed. I'm in debt up to my neck. That's why He stopped. That's why you tried to take my land. Daniel finished. Jacob nodded. Once. Shame written across his face in lines Daniel had never seen there before. I thought if I could claim partial guardianship of the estate, I could sell that interest, pay my creditors, start over. His hands lay flat on the desk, shaking slightly. I wasn't thinking about Tommy. I was desperate. The admission hung in the air, raw, ugly, true. Daniel looked at this man who'd been Martha's brother, who'd come to their wedding and smiled and made toasts, who'd held Tommy as a baby and said he had Martha's eyes. This man who'd let desperation make him cruel. I loved her too, Jacob said. His voice broke. Martha, she was my sister. When she died, He pressed his palms against his eyes. I didn't know what to do either, so I buried myself in the business, borrowed more money, made bad decisions, and when it all fell apart, I looked around for something to grab onto, and there was the ranch. Tears ran down his face. He didn't wipe them away. I told myself I was doing it for Tommy, that he'd be better off with family who had resources, but that was a lie. I was doing it for me, because I was too much of a coward to face what I'd become. Daniel's anger was a hot coal in his chest, but underneath it, something else stirred, something that looked uncomfortably like understanding. He'd been where Jacob was, standing in the ruins of everything, looking for something to blame besides himself. Grace's hand found his, squeezed. He took a breath, let it out slow. You owe me $387, he said, with interest calculated at 5% over 3 years. Jacob looked up, his face blotchy and wet. I can't pay that. Not now. Maybe not ever. I'm not asking for it today. Then what are you asking? I want your word that you'll pay it. However long it takes, whatever you have to do, I want it in writing, witnessed, legal. Jacob's throat worked. Why would you trust me? I don't, but I'm trusting that whatever made you Martha's brother is still in there somewhere, buried under the rest. Jacob wiped his face with the back of his hand. I'll pay it, I swear, every dollar. Put it in writing, Grace said. Pemberton was already writing. His pen scratched across the paper. When he finished, he turned it around, read it aloud. I, Jacob Hartwell, acknowledge a debt of $387 owed to Daniel Sawyer as guardian of the inheritance of Thomas Sawyer, said debt originating from funds borrowed from Martha Ann Sawyer, deceased. I agree to repay this debt in installments of no less than $10 per month beginning. He looked up. Beginning when? 1st of next month. Daniel said. Pemberton wrote, signed as witness. Pushed the paper toward Jacob. Jacob picked up the pen. His hand shook, but he signed. Then he pushed the paper across to Daniel. I'll drop the petition tomorrow, he said. File the withdrawal with the court. You and Tommy, you're free of this. Daniel took the paper, folded it, put it in his pocket beside Martha's envelope. Don't come back, he said. Don't write, don't send word. When you've paid the debt in full, then maybe, but not before. Jacob nodded, stood, walked out of the office without looking back. The door closed. Pemberton gathered the papers on his desk, stacked them neatly. "I'll prepare the formal withdrawal documents. They'll be filed by week's end. You'll receive confirmation by post." "Thank you," Daniel said. "Don't thank me. I was prepared to argue against you in court." Pemberton looked at him directly. "But I'm glad it didn't come to that. Your wife was a good woman. She deserved better than this." "Yes," Daniel said. "She did." They left the office, walked out into the evening. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and red. Grace's hand still held his. They walked down Harrison Street toward the boarding house where they'd arranged to stay the night. The train home left at 10 the next morning. They'd be back at the ranch by evening. Back to Tommy. Back to the life they'd fought to keep. Daniel's chest felt strange, hollow but not empty, like something heavy had been lifted out and the space left behind was clean. "We won," Grace said. "We did. Are you all right?" He didn't know how to answer that. Wasn't sure what all right meant anymore. Wasn't sure if the hollow feeling was relief or grief or both. They reached the boarding house, climbed the steps. The landlady showed them to their rooms, 2 doors, side by side. Grace paused at hers, looked at him. "After," she said. Daniel's heart stumbled. "What? You asked me before if I'd stay. You said to ask you after we won. When I was sure." She set down her carpet bag, faced him direct. "I'm asking." The question hung between them, heavy with everything it meant, everything it could mean. Daniel opened his mouth. A sound came from down the hall. Footsteps. Heavy, fast, purposeful. They both turned. A man appeared at the top of the stairs, broad-shouldered, work clothes, face. Daniel didn't recognize. "You Sawyer?" the man asked. Daniel's hand moved automatically to Grace's arm, pulling her slightly behind him. "Who's asking?" "Name's Miller. I work for the telegraph office." He pulled a yellow paper from his pocket. "Got an urgent wire for you. Came through an hour ago." Daniel took it. The paper trembled in his hand. He read it once, twice. The words didn't change. "Daniel." Grace's voice, distant, like she was speaking through water. He handed her the telegram, watched her face as she read. "Tommy sick. Stop. High fever. Stop. Come home. Stop. McAllister." The night train south cost double. Daniel paid without asking the price. They sat in the last car, the only passengers heading back at that hour. The conductor looked at their faces and didn't ask questions. Grace held the telegram, read it again, set it in her lap, picked it up, read it again. "High fever," she said. "Could be anything." Daniel stared out the window at his own reflection. Behind the glass, darkness rolled past. "Martha started with fever," he said. 3 days of it. Then she couldn't get out of bed. Tommy's not Martha. She was strong too, until she wasn't. The train rocked, picked up speed. Not fast enough. Never fast enough. Daniel's hands opened and closed on his knees. Grace's fingers found his, held tight. They didn't speak for the rest of the journey. just sat pressed close while the wheels ate up the miles between them and home. Dawn was breaking when they reached town. They hired a wagon. Daniel drove, pushed the horse harder than he should have. The animal's sides heaved. Foam showed white at the bit, but it kept running. Grace gripped the seat. Didn't tell him to slow down. The miles passed. The sun climbed. The road stretched out, and Daniel couldn't make the distance shrink fast enough. When Mrs. McAllister's homestead finally came into view, he saw her on the porch before the wagon even stopped. She was holding Tommy. The boy's head rested against her shoulder. His arms hung limp. His face was flushed red even from a distance. Daniel threw the reins, jumped down before the wheels stopped moving, ran. Tommy's eyes opened when Daniel reached them. Glassy, unfocused. Pa. The word came out slurred. I'm here. Daniel took his son from Mrs. McAllister. The boy's body burned against his chest, heat coming through the thin nightshirt in waves. He'd been playing in the creek the day after you left, Mrs. McAllister said. Her face was drawn, gray with exhaustion. Came home soaked and shivering. Fever started that night. Been burning up for 3 days now. I've been giving him willow bark tea to bring it down. Cool baths. It broke about an hour ago, but he's still mighty hot. Grace was beside them now, her hand on Tommy's forehead, on his neck, checking. We need to get him home, she said. Cool him down proper. They wrapped Tommy in a blanket despite the heat. Laid him in the back of the wagon on the pile of feed sacks Mrs. McAllister brought out. Grace climbed in beside him, laid him on his bed. Grace stripped off, laid him on his bed. Grace stripped off the sweat-soaked nightshirt, brought cool water from the well, soaked cloths and laid them on his forehead, on his chest, on his wrists where the pulse beat too fast. Daniel stood in the doorway, useless, watching. Tommy's eyes drifted closed, opened, closed again. Mama, he said, Grace's hand stilled on the cloth. No, honey, it's Miss Grace. Mama's gone. I know. Don't want to go too. You're not going anywhere. Grace's voice stayed steady, but her hands shook when she wrung out another cloth. You're staying right here with us. Tommy's breathing evened out, sleep taking him. Grace kept the cloths cool, kept working. Daniel watched her, watched the way her hands moved, gentle but sure, the way she'd done everything since she arrived, taking what was broken and making it function again. An hour passed, 2. The sun climbed higher. Tommy's color started to return, not the flush of fever, just the normal tan of a boy who spent his days outside. His breathing deepened. His forehead cooled under Grace's hand. She sat back, wiped her own face with the corner of her apron. He's sleeping now, she said. Really sleeping. Daniel's knees went weak. He sat down hard on the floor, put his head in his hands. Grace came to sit beside him. Their shoulders touched. Neither spoke. Through the window, the ranch spread out in afternoon light. The barn, the fence line, the land they'd fought to keep. Tommy stirred, made a small sound, settled again. I thought, Daniel's voice broke. He tried again. When I read that telegram, I thought I was going to lose him. like I lost her. But you didn't. Not this time. Not ever. Grace's hand found his. You're not going to lose him. Daniel, he's yours. Nobody can take him. You can't know that. I know he's strong. I know he's got you. I know that's enough. Daniel looked at her, at the exhaustion in her face, the determination in her eyes. You haven't slept, he said. Neither have you. I'm used to it. So am I. They sat there on the floor of Tommy's room while the boy slept and the sun moved across the sky and the house settled into the rhythms of afternoon. Evening came. Tommy woke hungry. Grace made broth. He ate it sitting up in bed, color back in his cheeks, voice stronger. Did you win? He asked. Daniel nodded. We won. So I get to stay. You get to stay. Tommy's face crumpled. Tears came fast. Relief, maybe, or exhaustion, or both. Grace sat on the edge of the bed. Tommy curled into her. She held him while he cried, rocked him slow like he was small again. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching his son being comforted by a woman who'd been a stranger 2 months ago, who'd become something else, something he didn't have words for yet. When Tommy's tears slowed, Grace laid him back down, pulled the quilt up, smoothed his hair. Sleep now, she said. When you wake up, things will look better. Will you be here? Grace looked at Daniel. He saw the question in her eyes, the same one he'd asked her in Butte City, the one that still hung unanswered between them. Yes, she said. I'll be here. Tommy's eyes closed. This time, sleep took him easy. No fever, no restlessness. Just a tired boy in his own bed in his own house. Grace stood, moved past Daniel into the kitchen, started banking the fire for the night. Daniel followed, watched her work, the familiar motions he'd seen her do every evening since she arrived. Grace, he said. She paused, hands on the stove. Don't what? Don't ask me now, not when we're both exhausted. Not when Tommy just... Her voice caught. Not now. Then when? She turned, faced him. When you're sure it's me you want. Not just someone to help with the ranch and Tommy. Me. Daniel crossed the kitchen, stopped close enough to see the way her chest rose and fell with each breath, close enough to feel the heat coming off the stove behind her. I'm sure, he said. Are you? Because 2 days ago, you couldn't answer when I asked if you were choosing me or just choosing not to be alone. I was afraid. Of what? Of this. Of wanting something good again. Of letting myself hope it could last. His hands lifted, fell back to his sides. After Martha died, I thought that was it. That was my one chance, and I'd used it up. That I didn't deserve another. Grace's jaw tightened. And now I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe we get more than one chance. He pulled his grandmother's ring from his pocket, the thin gold band he'd carried since Butte City. I'm not asking you to stay as help. I'm asking you to marry me, to be Tommy's. He stopped, made himself say it plain. To be Tommy's mother, to be my wife. Grace looked at the ring, at his face, at the kitchen around them with its feed sack curtains and herbs hanging from the rafters and the life they'd built together in 2 months. I'm not Martha, she said. I know. I can't replace her. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to build something new with me, something that's ours. Not because we need each other, because we choose each other. Grace's eyes searched his face, looking for something, whatever it was. She must have found it because her shoulders dropped and she let out a breath she'd been holding. "Yes," she said. Relief crashed through Daniel's chest. He reached for her, pulled her close. She came willing, fit against him like she'd always belonged there. They stood that way for a long moment, not kissing, just holding, just breathing together in the warm kitchen with the stove ticking as it cooled and the evening settling in outside. When they finally pulled apart, Grace held out her hand. Daniel slid the ring onto her finger. It fit. A sound came from the doorway. Small footsteps, unsteady. Tommy stood there, wrapped in his quilt, eyes half open. "Can't sleep," he said. Grace moved to him. "Come here." Tommy shuffled over, climbed into her lap, even though he was getting too big. His head rested against her shoulder. "Better?" she asked. "Mm-hmm." Daniel watched them. His son. The woman who'd become, not a replacement for Martha. Something different. Something new, but just as necessary. Tommy's breathing evened out. Grace shifted him gently. His eyes cracked open. "Night, Pa," he murmured. "Night, son." Tommy's eyes stayed on Grace. "Night, Ma." The word hung in the air, soft, certain, true. Grace's breath caught. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Night, baby." Tommy's eyes closed. This time they stayed closed. Grace held him, rocked him slow. Daniel's hand found the small of her back, supporting her, supporting them both. Outside, the stars multiplied. The night deepened. Somewhere up in the hills, a coyote called. Another answered. The ancient song of wild things claiming their territory. Daniel looked at his family. At the kitchen they sat in. At the house with its warm lamplight. Beyond the windows, the land stretched dark under stars. His land. Tommy's land. The place they'd fought to keep. All of it hard-won, all of it fragile, all of it worth every fight. Grace's head rested against his shoulder. Tommy's small breaths filled the quiet. The wind moved through the grass beyond the yard. Tomorrow there would be work, fences to mend, fields to tend, a wedding to plan, life to live. But tonight there was just this, 3 people together, whole, home. There's something heavy that settles after a story like this one, something that sits in the chest and doesn't ask to be named or understood. Perhaps you felt it too, that familiar weight of knowing what it means to start over when you thought all the chances were used up. When the house goes silent and the days blur together and you wonder if this is just how it is now. Many of us have stood where Daniel stood. Not in Montana territory, maybe, but in that same place where everything fell apart and we didn't know how to pick up the pieces. Some of us have been Grace too, walking a long road with everything we own in a bag, hoping someone might see past the dust and the wear to what we still have to give. And maybe some of us have been Tommy, caught between what was and what might be, needing both the memory and the new beginning. These things don't resolve neatly, The grief and the hope can live side by side. The fear and the joy. It's all right for it to feel unfinished. Real things often do. The love we lost doesn't disappear when we find love again. It's allowed to stay complicated. Thank you for staying with this family tonight, for letting their story rest alongside your own.